Good evening, good morning. Welcome to week 5 of PSSL 6240. I just want to welcome you again to week 5 and just cover a preview of last week, review of next week. Before I get started, I just want to cover some announcements. There we go. Adobe Connect session this Thursday, Eastern Standard Time. That's on 4 February, 10 p.m. I know it's a little bit late for those on the East Coast, but I want to make sure that people on the West Coast can still come home from work. And last time I got some issues that it was maybe a little bit too early. So we're going to shoot for 10 p.m. this week. If that's an issue, let me know. But again, these Adobe Connect sessions are optional unless you're the one briefing. So 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Week 2 or group 2 is in the shoot, and go ahead with a 20-minute presentation on your topic for group 2, and everyone else it's optional, and it's a good time for office hours or if you want to get some ideas to round up your paper. This week I'm traveling to Fort Campbell for a briefing, so I might be a little bit out of the loop, out of touch from email, so I want to make sure that you're aware of that. And then finally, the paper, as you know, is due next week. So same time same issue. If there's any issues or something getting it done, please let me know now. If there's medical or family issues, don't wait till Sunday and tell me I can't do the paper. That's unsat. So just some quotes on the last paper. Everyone has had their paper marked, and I've given you comments. But I want to just say across the board, everyone needs work. Everyone needs work on their analysis, on their argument, first of all, how to sustain an argument through 4 or 5 pages, how to make a clear argument right from the part, how not to drown your argument in history. And I saw this a lot. A lot of people had history, and they brought up a chronology of the terrorist organization and chose parts of the chronology that said, here, they did this in 1989. It's a terrorist act. They did this in 1996. It's terrorism. You would do better not by going chronologically, but by pinning your argument on those facets. So if you're doing the IRA and you say 1972, they did a massacre of civilians. So instead of saying 1972, say, 1, the IRA does massacres of civilians, blah, 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 blah. Secondly, they have a political group. They have a political objective that they desire. And then here's why they're a terrorist organization. They explain their political objective. Don't just give me 1971, the IRA did this. 1974, the IRA did this. 1991, the IRA did this. Therefore, they're a terrorist organization. Strengthen your argument by pinning it on those critical facets. Secondly, proofreading. This is a graduate school. No one should tell you need to proofread at this point. Too many errors in grammar, spelling, diction. Show your work to your girlfriend, husband, guy next door so they can proofread it. Sometimes it's very difficult to proofread your own work. So make sure you've proofread it, and don't do it at the last minute. I can tell when your paper is done at the last minute the day before. And then finally, analysis. Again, away from the history, I would rather have 10% history, 90% analysis, using your own thought process for your analysis. So that's what I want for the paper 2, which is coming up, and I'll talk about that in a second. A couple other issues. Passive voice. Here's a sentence. The ball was kicked by the dog. That is a sentence that's passive voice. The subject is dog. The verb was kicked, and the direct object was ball. That makes your writing much more difficult to understand. The dog kicked the ball. That is a much better sentence. Simple, clean, to the point. Other problems in grammar, not really grammar, but overall writing, too long sentences. Sometimes people write sentences and they put prepositions and they put too many additives, and you kind of get run-on sentences there. Sentences that are short, sweet, use less words are always going to be better than longer sentences. a historical argument. And for some reason, for both my in-person and online course, a lot of people did the A-bomb. And this isn't just applies to that, but I'll use them as an example. Why is Hiroshima not terrorism while 9/11 is? And that seemed to be quite a few people did their papers on that. Some of you rest your argument that the atom bomb is the atom bomb ended World War II or forced the Japanese to surrender. And some of you rested your argument. It's not terrorism because it forced Japan to surrender and saved hundreds of thousands of lives. That's a historical assumption. That might not be true. There's other factors that brought Japan to the negotiating table to surrender, including the Allied blockade, the Russian invasion, or the Russians coming into the war. Those were just as much factors, probably even more so than the atom bomb. So if you're pinning your argument on the atom bomb causing the surrender of the Japanese, that argument's undermined. Your entire analysis is undermined. So keep that in mind. Just a couple of questions. Just review of last week and next week. I apologize. It says paper review. It should say just your review of last week and next week. So current events. We don't get to talk current events too much in this class. That's a shame. I know some people bring it up as I'm writing this or as I'm speaking. I know the second Japanese hostage was executed by ISIS, or at least its reports. Something that didn't make the news is one of the senior Hezbollah leaders was killed by what they're saying now is a joint U.S.-Israeli strike, or at least intelligence provided that strike in southern Lebanon. And this is in response to the 2 Israeli soldiers that were killed earlier in the week. Great segue into a great review of this course so far, or a great way to look at it. Look at this incident. Hopefully what you get out of this is, and we're going to bring this up next week, is this an effective way to defeat Hezbollah from the counterterrorism perspective? Or is this just another tit for tat? We have to do it because we have to achieve some sort of justice. The second thing is, when we talked about what is terrorism, what is not, yeah, Hezbollah for the United States and Israel is certainly a terrorist organization. They've killed Israelis, they've bombed embassies abroad, they've killed, and this person was responsible for killing Americans, kidnapping Americans back in the 80s, and for us, great, he's dead. For the other side, Hezbollah is a political organization. They're part of the Lebanese parliament. And for their perspective, we just assassinated one of their political operatives, as if ISIS came in and just started killing Republicans or Democrats in the Congress. So it goes on, what's your definition of a terrorist? And the New York Times did a pretty good review on how to achieve the legal analysis to make sure that this person was considered a terrorism. It's actually pretty fascinating how they went about and and I agree with their analysis, this is terrorism, to actually say that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization and this person engaged in that extrajudicial killings that were outside the normal political process. So fascinating look. Please read about it up in the New York Times. Washington Post did some pretty good analysis on it. So just review of last week, terrorist adaptation, and I think we covered that in detail. Why were some successful? Why were others fail? And I think a lot of you answered the questions. And that's just something we want to look forward from here on in. We just talked about Hezbollah. Why was Hezbollah one of the success stories in your success stories, as they were able to succeed, while Shinrikyo, Earth Liberation Front, and others that were brought up in the case study failed. So that's hopefully you took away those certain dynamics, how they approached a fork in the road, how they either became more radicalized or subdued the radical elements within their organization, how they financed themselves, and how they adapted to counter-terrorist activities. And then the second part, terrorism, WMD. I think we had a really good discussion. Drew brought this up, and a lot of you bandwagon is there a difference between WMD, a 9/11 like incident, and WMD, chemical, biological, radiological? Interesting philosophical argument. Just doctrinally, WMD is considered, again, chem, bio, nuke, and rad. But the argument is you can kill thousands of people in an explosion. You can kill thousands of people by what we saw in 9/11. Should that also be considered a WMD type attack? I'll let you guys decide on that. There's certainly debate on there. What I do want to talk about is, and this is going to lead into the papers, how do we acquire, ship, and disseminate WMD? How can a terrorist organization achieve those goals? And what I want in the paper is kind of a technical analysis. One of your questions is, okay, they're building ricin, talking about developing ricin in Yemen, or Al-Qaeda in Yemen is trying to do that. Okay, great. We got reports that they're trying to do that. So what? Is that a threat here? How many people is that going to kill? Is that something I need to close down? If you're in New York, close down all the tunnels coming in because you fear that there's a ricin threat in Manhattan? So those are the types of issues you're going to have to explore. And I kind of want that technical analysis in your papers, whether it's ricin, whether it's sarin gas, whether it's Iraq or ISIS and their laptop of doom. Can you produce that analysis so a policymaker can either understand it better and make a better policy based on your recommendations? And then I want argument in your paper. I want you to take a position whether you think the threat is there or not, and make sure that the position is clear and you back it up with argument. The one thing I want to say is, just to make this clear, the Syria scenario, the second one, you have to imagine, I know right now in 2015 we've eliminated the Syrian stockpile, we're about 90% done. You have to imagine though that we've actually, it's 2013 when that article was written and we haven't eliminated the Syrian arsenal, and Syria just used that arsenal on a mass scale, and Syrian al-Nusra, ISIS, and other organizations, militant jihadists are overrunning large parts of Syria. So the question is, if you're thinking again back to 2013, is it a threat? You get this call that ISIS is overrunning large parts of Syria. WMD could fall in their hands. Is that a threat to the United States and our allies? So that's, again, if you're going to do scenario 2, think back to that last year. And just preview of next week, counterterrorism strategy. Gora lecture, excellent lecture on Israeli, focused on Israeli, but there's other countries in there. Their counterterrorism strategies, success and failures. Again, what I want you to think through when you're doing the Hoffman, the Van Evera, that should be EVERA, I apologize, and the Akapanti article, the counterterrorism in the EU, think through what's successful, what isn't, why was it successful, why was it not. So please incorporate that in your papers or in your discussion sections this week. I look forward to you reading your papers, and if there's any questions, please shoot me an email.